Hello, world. Welcome to Collider Convo, where we chat with the innovative leaders driving the next wave of digital business solutions across industries. My name is Ryan.
And I'm Jacob.
And together we run Collider, where business leaders go to collaborate, get unstuck, and supercharge their digital strategy.
And of course, Collider is powered by Altimetric, a pure play data and digital engineering services company focused on business growth.
So be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and visit collider.altimetric.com to learn how Collider and Altimetric can help catalyze your digital business strategy.
Today, we are talking about the digital future of pharma with a very special guest, Ramji Vasudevan, senior engineering leader at Altimetric, who has extensive experience in the pharmaceutical industry. For quick context, pharma companies can spend upwards of $2.6 billion to develop a single drug, and speed is everything. Today, we'll explore how digital business solutions can shorten those development cycles and drastically improve efficiency to drive down these costs. So as we look to get started, I'm looking for you, Ramji, to just tell us a bit about the type of work that you do as a senior engineering leader at Altimetric.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for having me. And as a senior engineering leader at Altimetric, I focus on how do we help our clients, particularly in the pharma space, derive the best value of the data that they have, and how do they fasten some of the business cycles and decisions that they can make and be at the forefront of innovation.
Ramji, as a senior engineer, what is your experience specifically, your experience working with pharma industry?
Ryan, working with the pharma industry, my experience has been in helping them get the best out of the data that the pharma industries have. There is vast amounts of data, a lot of business insights that the pharma industries are looking to generate. And me and my team, we have been working with them to see how best to create single sources of truth and then enable them to get business value of those.
That's really interesting. So diving a bit deeper into what you just described, what would you say are the main challenges facing the pharma industry today?
The main challenges, Jacob, has been around how pharma industries are able to use the data. Most of the pharma companies have had data always. They are sitting on vast troves of data, all disjointed. And the challenge really has been for them to be able to drive business decisions effectively in order to further their interests. Some of the typical challenges include, like, if they want to learn from their past clinical trials and you put it to good use for the future clinical trials. Sounds like a simple statement in and of itself, but the challenge has been, like, how do you get all the data of the clinical trials in one place? How do you create a single source of truth which people can then start working off and then creating business value that can accelerate their innovation cycles? That has been one of the critical challenges, not just within the clinical trials, but across, whether it's manufacturing, whether it is environmental, social and governance aspects of it. Across the pharma industry, there are a variety of challenges that they are looking to solve through data, but really not able to come to terms with because the data is all over.
What are some key business trends or some of the ways that companies are looking to address that traditionally?
Yeah, as far as business trends, Jacob, pharma companies are always looking at how do they become faster and more efficient in terms of time to market. Right? I mean, this is just dealing with their current ways of how do they get a drug out from molecule to the market, right? It takes anywhere between 9 to 12 years. And they are always on the lookout for how do they get that cycle shortened, therefore they can start generating more value faster. And then there are other business trends that are coming up, which have to do with some of the advances with science overall. Personalized healthcare, for example, we as patients are starting to generate more and more data through wearables. Are pharma companies able to take advantage out of those and then able to personalize healthcare a little bit? And then the ecosystem itself with respect to blockchain, that's also going up in terms of what blockchain can achieve, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper all the time. And we know that pharma industry, for example, there are a lot of challenges around counterfeiting the drugs. How can something like a blockchain be helpful to stop that? So there are very interesting trends that we see from Altimetric around the pharma industry, and central to that is what I see as a data challenge. How do they bring the data together and then be able to derive value, be able to share data across, whether it is internally within their own organizations, between the various organization silos, or even across for collaboration with other pharma companies. How do they do that is becoming an interesting proposition.
So we have talked about challenges and the trends. Can you now talk about some of the biggest opportunities that have come from this realm?
The biggest opportunity, Ryan, I see that is for pharma companies as it's about $1.2, $1.3 trillion industry today, and set to grow by 20-30% in the next 5 to 7 years, right? The biggest opportunity will be for organizations which are nimble and able to drive a lot more value. We just talked about how it takes 9 to 12 years just to get a medicine out of the market, right? The opportunities will be for companies who are able to shorten the cycle and then also ride the wave of new incoming innovations in science overall. And then how do they do that in a way where they can digitize the health technologies a little bit, personalize the medicine, and then let's not forget regulatory and compliance needs as well, right? I mean, pharma is a heavily regulated industry for the right reasons. And while they do all this innovation, digitization, they still have to make sure that they're able to comply. So those are some of the opportunities. How do they do all of this in a way where they're still able to cater very important advancements in science to people?
I'd love to dive deeper into some of those some of the opportunities that you're laying out, because that's really interesting. Before we do that, for someone tuning in who's maybe not as familiar with the pharma industry, what is the balance, say, of between like large corporations and up and coming startups in this mix? So could you kind of lay out the landscape? There's obviously the regulation side, the big players, the small, I'm assuming more nimble players. Could you just give us a sense of the landscape?
Pharma has traditionally been an industry where most of the companies have had a rich history, rich heritage. Many of the top organizations, many of the top pharma companies have a history of 50 years or plus, right? But what we are seeing now with data and digitalization kicking in across, there is a viable opportunity for upstarts to challenge that ecosystem really fast. We saw that with the COVID vaccine, for example. The RNA vaccine that was developed by Moderna was a classic example of how they leveraged data and digital technologies to really speeden up the entire process of generating that vaccine in quick time. So while the balance as of date, Jacob, is slightly more on organizations which have a rich heritage, I wouldn't be so sure it'll remain the same way over the next 10-15 years, so to say. I think it's right for some change.
And then it'll be so interesting to see where consolidation and different things factor in. Asking about the other side of that, so you mentioned regulatory and compliance. With regards to an organization getting a better grip on its data, so obviously you mentioned about speed and efficiency. Could you dive a bit deeper about the opportunity that exists from a regulatory and compliance side regarding the better consolidating data?
Certainly, Jacob. And then I'll draw an example of submission from the clinical trials to drug agencies, drug regulatory agencies like FDA and EMA, right? Whenever an organization, a pharma organization wants to get its drug certified by the local agency, they will have to submit a lot of paperwork, which is needed for regulatory and compliance reasons. After all, we are talking about human lives here, and there are very legitimate reasons why these agencies want to make sure that there is a due diligence done in terms of how the drug was tested and how effective it was. And when you talk about the opportunity for data and digital here, if you look at the submission process, we have seen examples of how from the last day of the trial finish to the day they submit to the agencies, it could take anywhere between a few weeks to multiple months, sometimes up to 6 to 9 months. And and all of this, while it may be very challenging for people to submit the next day, if the companies adopt the right data and digital posture, we have seen companies being able to turn around this cycle a lot faster. And we know that once they get it out of the door and get it to the compliance agencies in the way it is demanded or asked of, and it gets approved, then time is money here, right? I mean, you're able to sell that much faster. So, and then also in many cases, like with COVID, it's not just time is money, it's also people's lives at stake sometimes. So there is a real opportunity, for example, people to start thinking about how they do data aspects of compliance a lot better in order to shorten the cycles for submission.
Speaking of how people do things, how would you describe Altimetrics' approach to turning companies into full-fledged, just all-out digital businesses?
A great question, right? I mean, so and then there is an interesting element in there, Ryan, which is pharma companies know that they have to go data and digital. They have tried and have been trying this for a few years now. And one of the reasons sometimes these fail is because they try to adapt a big bang approach and then call it a digital transformation. I recently read an article in Forbes which said digital transformation is a failed state, right? And that's one of the traps that we avoid actively from Altimetric. We have a few basic tenets which we swear by and then always stick to. A few of them that I'm happy to share here is like, how do we, for example, break this down from a business value perspective? If there is it all starts with the business. When we talk about transformation, how does business see value in the transformation? And that is the key driver for organizations to take value out of the transformation. And that also makes the business owners, along with the IT teams working with the business, to be part of the change and not necessarily a laggard and trying to catch up with, okay, what's the value here? So it's a cultural aspect, a very important cultural aspect. And the way Altimetric we work with our customers is like we enable those conversations where we have business, IT, and us. We sit on the table and then we very rigorously talk about the why of the change. And the second important aspect is to break that down into small slivers which will generate value. We do not want to think about some of these changes as like 3-year, 4-year programs or even 6 months programs. We want to think about, let's take a sliver of this problem. We know that's a problem, which is complex. It may take into multiple iterations, but take a sliver of the problem. Let's address it first. And this is a very agile approach that has proven to be successful for us and for very other companies as well. How do you generate value iteratively? And it also provides people with an ability to look at and say, like, are we doing the right things or are we having to look at and tweak it? And since the business, as the first step, we talked about the cultural involvement of business. Since the business is also involved, you're always in lockstep with what the business wants, and therefore you're guaranteed to hit those returns. And then a third important aspect, if I may, is what typically we see is while the business wants value from some of the things that they're doing, the data is very critical too. A lot of organizations struggle when it comes to getting the data and having the data to provide value, or having the data talk and provide value. And this is where we believe there has to be single sources of truth, which are cloud enabled or built on cloud. And that will enable teams to start looking at, okay, here is my business data all in one place. I can trust it. I should be able to build business value out of. So those are, in my mind, are three very important aspects before anything else, of course.
You mentioned kind of working across teams and breaking down silos. Is the process you're describing then led by the technology team, like a traditional digital transformation, or is it led by the business leaders of the company? Like, how does that break down, and how do you spur that collaboration, I suppose?
Excellent question, Jacob. And this is where, from Altimetric, we believe we need practitioners to solve such challenges. And Altimetric, we always take practitioners. We are all a bunch of broad practitioners. What do we mean by broad practitioners here? Practitioners are people who understand the business value of doing something, but then also marry it with the engineering and product capabilities needed to bring that to fore. And the way we enable that change in organizations is, like, as practitioners, we go in, we ask for the business teams why to do any certain change. And if it doesn't find consonance with what the IT team needs, then we rally around to bring everybody to the table to understand and reflect, and then zero down on the particular why for the change before we even take the next steps. Many times we have figured out you do that step right, the rest of the things become a lot more easier in terms of breaking it down and going further.
How do you say that this works in tandem, or even just like holistically, with pharma specifically?
Thanks, Ryan. So what we see in pharma specifically, especially with some of the silos of thinking that we have been talking about between business and IT, right? We see that pharma companies want to become more digital in their outlook, and then it's not a question anymore of if it's like how quickly can you get there. So, and then when they start thinking about doing it, many organizations fall into the trap of, okay, IT team, how can you go make this digital? And then the business team is all the time solving their other needs with respect to how do they sell better, how do they innovate faster, how do they manufacture faster, etc. Right? And therein lies the challenge sometimes, where your business team has a certain need, and it's not always in alignment with what the IT team thinks of as transformation. And as practitioners at Altimetric, what we always believe is bring the two together. Let's talk about let's again take the case of clinical trials, which we have been talking about for a while now. If we talk about clinical trials, and then if we talk about submission post the clinical trials, good example would be like, what is an acceptable time frame for organizations, pharma companies to have between the last patient final visit to the submission? What is an acceptable time frame? If the business says, I would love 3 days, then we work backwards and then try to understand, all right, so what's your IT capability to support this 3 days? If it is 3 months to 3 days, what are your systems in place which can help you support that? Do we really need a transformation in those systems in terms of how do you uplift them to do better? Where is your data landscape? How does it look like? Do you have all the elements of your data in one place to be able to support and drive those decisions faster? This becomes an exercise where we start peeling down, and then we start taking slivers of it. It's like, we know that the data is in one place, but may not be in a way where the decisions can be made. Okay, first thing to go check is to really target that and break the down. Then, okay, has that given us some mileage? Has it helped us improve the decision making, that's a rear view mirror check to make sure that we are focusing in the right direction. So we keep doing this iteratively, and over a period of time, the business and IT team, it becomes very natural for them to collaborate and start working towards a common goal.
Do you have any examples of companies who have successfully developed the single source of truth? And could you dive a bit deeper into what that looks like in practice?
Absolutely. Turns out, as you rightly said, Jacob, turns out many organizations have tried it. Not a lot have succeeded in creating them. But one of the glowing examples that I've seen in the recent past is in our collaboration with an organization like Novartis. We are presented along with Novartis in the Snowflake Summit last year, where we talked about how they created an enterprise-wide platform which can bring the data together in one place and then start making decisions. It was a realization that Novartis ran into a few years before, and they started about setting a very specific set of goals around how they will bring it, a solid architecture to support it, and then also the business buy-in to support it, right? So all of this, we needed to go hand in hand. And a very practical approach of like, okay, let's start bringing in data by slivers. Let's not try to get all the data in one place, and then we wouldn't know what the data would serve, right? I mean, as important as getting the data in is also to know what data actually resides in your single source of truth, so in order to extract value. So Novartis did a practical approach of, okay, let's start bringing in data by slivers, making sure that it's of value for the business, start generating value, and then keep moving forward. We have other excellent examples as well, where organizations have gone the other way and then failed. For example, I have worked with some organizations in the past where they sunk millions of dollars trying to get all the data into the central single source of truth, and then one day to later realize that nobody knew what the data was about or where to data. So those are some practical challenges which organizations run into. They do understand that SSOT is a need, but then very often the need to get the data in and versus how do you use it is also something that many times companies trip over.
So as opposed to that, that's when you're talking about the big bang versus the bite size, where the big bang would be dumping, spending all the money and resources and time getting the data into the system, and then discovering that it doesn't do exactly what you need, versus taking the iterative approach that you're describing, slowly bringing the data in, making sure it's valuable until ultimately all the data is in one place. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, exactly that, Jacob. I mean, precisely that. Getting some data into a single source of truth and making sure there is business value out of it, and making sure that it stays that way through proper data practices. Easier said than done, but then that's where the secret sauce is.
Speaking of the secret sauce, so you talk about all the data being put into a single source of truth. I think that may be the beginning of success, but how do you define or measure success for your clients in general?
I often ask some of my clients to think about a future state and how would they want this to look like. And it's an exercise that I find very useful to walk with the clients to see where their state of mind is. In my mind, if you really think about what we want from our data and what analytics we want from our data, if organizations are able to have anybody in their organization be able to, in a self-service way, bring the data together from the platform or source of truth, be able to derive analytics and then use it for making decisions. And this doesn't need to be someone who is particularly fantastic with some of the big data technologies, but knows what the business problem is. If a business person is able to do by themselves in terms of using the data, drawing some analytics, making some business decisions by themselves, that would be the perfect place to be. So how do we support or how do we help organizations to get there? is a multi-step process. Get the data in, make sure there is enough security built around who can access the data, provide enough guardrails around how much compute is provided to who, and then cloud can become a very expensive exercise if not managed properly, right? So there is a FinOps angle in terms of how do you manage your expenses too. And then we are also talking about other elements like, okay, how do you share data within organizations and across organizations, and how do you make sure that the sharing of data is beneficial and it provides some business value as well.
And are those all aspects, so just tying it back to Altimetric's approach, so these are all aspects of what Altimetric supports teams with, and in answering that, I'm hoping you could dive deeper into the platform you mentioned and how that helps to measure those outcomes.
No, absolutely. These are aspects that we at Altimetric definitely pride ourselves with in terms of getting and helping our customers. And key to that is our ability to break this down into small, realizable business value chunks. And we also, we believe this is better done through a platform which creates the guardrails needed for people to stick to swim lanes, create it fast, and be able to derive value iteratively and quickly. And what do we mean by that? How do you create a digital platform which enables developers to focus on the most important thing, which is write code and be able to generate analytics very quickly, right? And you can, if you think about it, this can become really convoluted when you have hundreds and hundreds of developers. If they start creating their own environments or the own ways of thinking about how to bring the data in, if they have their own software development methodologies, it becomes very challenging to bring it all together. And that's where a solid digital business platform can provide the right level of freedom for engineers to think about how to engineer the solutions, but also the right guardrails to make sure that there are certain swim lanes that one should keep to in terms of how they develop the code.
I'm curious to know, with a platform like what you're describing, is that something that is cloud agnostic, or is that like a specific platform? So like when you talk about the freedom, is that you could have different teams. I know within large organizations, you might have one team on Azure and you might have another team using AWS. You might have different teams using totally different tools. So the type of platform that you're describing, it brings all of that information together, if I'm understanding what you're describing?
That would be the ideal platform, Jacob. An ideal platform would really not be constrained to a specific cloud provider or a specific technology. We want to provide the developers with the freedom to choose the tools which will make their code sing, so to say, right? So we should be able to provide that as a option, and there are really good digital business platforms which support that today, which can provide the best of breed tools options available for organizations to pick and start putting it through the paces for their developers.
Thank you for that, Ramji. Are there any current projects right now that you're working on that you feel you're like breaking ground with? Or can you give us a specific example of what you're dealing with right now today with any clients?
Absolutely, Ryan. I mean, one of the recent projects that I'm kicked about is how we are solving a particular challenge with one of the big pharma companies. The challenge that they have is they have multiple manufacturing sites, tens of them, and it has become a real challenge for them to understand how these different sites operate and what's the yield, which batches are ready, when are they ready for shipment, etc. Of course, at a site level, they have all the digital tools that they need, and they're able to draw all sorts of analytics. But as a organization, how do they look at it holistically? and how do they know which site is doing well, when are certain batches ready for shipment, etc., has become a real challenge for them. The program that we are involved in right now is trying to see how we can solve the problem. This, as you can think about, a global organization will have sites in very different countries. Like, there are language challenges, there are local IT tools. We are talking about data not being consistent in terms of format, and we are trying to see how we can bring all the data together and have the data provide very good analytics and insights for this particular organization that we're talking about, and how they can use that to make much faster decisions. Why is it critical? As we get into more personalized medicine, there are examples of new age medicines which are curated for specific people based on their genes, right? And then the shelf life of these medicine typically is like, you create the medicine and then it takes multiple weeks to get there. But then once you create it, it has a shelf life of like 72 hours. And when you have multiple sites manufacturing this kind of a thing, and you have 72 hours, and if there is a customer sitting in one corner of the world, you would think like, as a pharma company, you would want to have the leverage of figuring out which is the site you want to manufacture, how do you then orchestrate how it ships within the time to the patient and then gets administered. Very promising, very interesting challenge, and we're excited about solving some of them for them.
On that note, we're talking about the future of pharma. You've mentioned a lot of really interesting, so you just dove into the personalized healthcare angle. You alluded to blockchain and machine learning earlier in the conversation. As we look to the future in this industry, could you just share another example of like a emerging technology that you think is going to have a major impact, and what that could look like?
Absolutely. I think digital health is going to be very key for pharma companies to look at and tap into in the future. With amount of wearables that we have these days, which my Apple Watch can tell me whether I'm having a cardiac problem or not. And then how do you tie that piece of information to some of the medication that I'm having, and then alert maybe a physician or tell even my pharma company about some of these, could be very, very interesting. I mean, we are on the cusp of some of those already. There are some early examples of how this has all been brought together efficiently. But when you think about millions of such devices coming together, sharing information, and then you have the challenge of making sure that what information is being shared as well. I mean, and then it's all patient information, which can be very sensitive. It's going to be interesting on how we keep the patient safety and the privileges on one side protected, but at the same time, how do we enable all this technology to come together for the betterment of the human health overall. So I'm excited to see how that space grows.
Cool.
Yeah, very excited to see how it grows too, and just to, continue to tap in with you and follow up to see the growth and the development. And I'm sure we aren't the only ones that may want to keep up with you and follow. So where can listeners learn more?
Yeah, I'm on my LinkedIn, and I certainly invite people to hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to talk.
We encourage folks also to again, visit collider.altimetric.com, where you can learn more about Altimetric services more broadly. We've also got great articles diving into the pharmaceutical industry specifically, but also more generally, different resources, discussing Altimetric's approach to driving digital business solutions, et cetera. So definitely tune in with us as well. So Ramji, as we look to wrap up, just curious if you have any final thoughts to share with the people, any insights that we maybe didn't cover, or anything else.
All good. I mean, pharma is an exciting space to be right now, and with the advent of a lot of new advancements in the ecosystem overall, and what data can help people achieve, and with the advancements in that as well. I'm very excited about where the space can grow.
Got it. Well, everyone watching, if you will, please remember to like and subscribe, and we will continue to just provide you with more valuable information, such as that Ramji has prepared and presented to us today. Yeah. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Ramji, you were amazing. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date on what's happening in pharma. Jacob, anything you want to say?
No, just thank you so much. This was really insightful. An industry that I'm not particularly clued into. So I feel like I learned a ton today, and just really exciting to see how some of these solutions that you're describing can apply in this particular context. I'm excited to learn more. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
No, thank you, Jacob and Ryan. Pleasure is all mine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.